All right, Clyde. I am coming to you from a secret location outside of Starbucks in, I think just outside the Loop, Houston, Texas. Mark, where are you?
You don't know where you are? I am in Durham, North Carolina.
Nice.
Great movie. Bull Durham, man. I'm in Nantucket. Just got back from New York. I was wined and dined in Manhattan by one of the big banks. And it was a sports media dinner with some really cool people. I was the least cool person there.
I thought you were there for Climate Week.
Well, I definitely added to the climate by flying in on the jet, but of course.
Are you allowed to say who was at dinner? Or is it hush hush?
It's hush hush, but I will roll it out as maybe not in this podcast, but I'm definitely gonna fill you in. Some cool people, definitely cool people.
We'll drop out. I was in New York last weekend. I went and saw Jeff Ross's one-man play.
I saw that.
On Broadway.
How was it?
It's so good. I think it's only running for another week, but I mean, moments in there you want to cry. You know, he's really honest and vulnerable, talking about his parents passing away. And then it's Jeff Ross, so you know you're going to get your ass roasted and you're going to laugh your ass off too because he's really funny. It's a great show.
Well, what do we got? What are we talking about in the world of energy this week?
Speaking of bombastic New Yorkers, Trump went and dropped the hammer on Climate Week. So kick us off, Mark.
Yeah, among many things coming out of the goings-on in New York, which is the UN Climate Week in conjunction with, I guess, other UN meetings, but in a fairly wide-ranging but pointed speech that I think lasted 53 minutes after overcoming the sabotage of the escalator and the faulty teleprompter. You know, a big part of his... It really is, you know, consistent with the theme, and I'll touch on a couple of other areas, certainly that we've seen since the administration took over. And I'm not sure I expected something as pointed, but he basically told, you know, countries who are following a certain path, let's just put it that way, one of the paths or one of the guideposts along that path has to do with rapid transition, a green agenda, et cetera. And he basically told those countries with that, and along with other things, policy-wise, that those countries were going to hell. And so not conventionally diplomatic, but also very direct and to the point. And I think, you know, there wasn't the... there wasn't the level of pushback, typical headlines post the speech yesterday. But, you know, the global decarbonization, net zero is at risk, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the response that we've seen in prior years has been, it was fairly muted yesterday.
Well, did y'all ever read the book, The Real Man's Handbook, Real Men Don't Eat Quiche? It made two great jokes about the UN. Number one that I always loved is something to the effect of, aside from producing a marginally attractive holiday card, what the hell has the UN actually done? And then the other thing is it's got all these people sitting there, and one guy covers the microphone and he goes, "I love sitting here screaming at them, calling them capitalist pigs. I do recognize they're paying for everything."
Look, man, Climate Week is amazing. It's like the Oscars for people who think they can control the weather. I mean, it really is like the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. And no one's winning any awards for common sense.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot on this show. And unless you start the conversation with, hey, once you go to burning hydrocarbons, your life expectancy from wood and dung inside your house, once you do that, your life expectancy doubles. If we don't start the conversation there, I just really find it hard to take seriously because, yes, I mean, we ignore climate change at our own peril. Temperatures are rising. It could have a big effect on the world. But how much exactly is caused by us, we truly don't know. We do need to be sensitive to that, but it's trade-offs. There are good things that come from it. And, why are we sacrificing lives today because in 100 years somebody might die? I just don't get, I'm so tired of this. Just you're ending the world, and it's just not true.
Well, the other big headline was from the world's largest coal consumer and emitter in China. President Xi said yesterday that they're committing to a 7 to 10% greenhouse gas or CO2 reduction from 2023 levels by 2035.
I mean, let's just kick that can down the road. I love making those statements. I'm not doing anything today.
My favorite part of Trump's speech was Europe, you've reduced your emissions 33%. The whole world's up 57 because of China. Congratulations, guys.
And just look at what has happened to some key economies in Europe in conjunction with that. The policy path that they've been on, and we talked about it last week, but we've really maybe too strong of a characterization. I think we've wasted about 5 years of fighting about this stuff and having very misdirected policy pronouncements, a lot of which we'll talk about one example in the next topic, but a lot of which is, a dilution of the attention and the focus that we ought to be paying. We're seeing power here in the U.S., particularly as it relates to transmission. And, now we're talking about global decline rates that are 8%. Where should we be spending that? And, the trillions that we've spent since Paris have basically been accompanied by about a 0.2 degree C increase in global temperatures. CO2 has gone up from low 4s to 4 2430, and so we continue to try and battle physics with platitudes mostly, and spend a bunch of money along the way, where our ability to number one, as you pointed out, Chuck, how much of it is due to human-sourced emissions, or the emissions, particularly as it relates to fossil fuels, and then what has that effect been? We just have had all these distractions in the political arena, in the policy-making areas, that have led to some real damage. I do think that the tone continues for these conferences, and it started at COP last year. COP 30 is coming up in Brazil in November. There seems to be a flagging energy in terms of pushing that side of the agenda. I think people are kind of worn out with it. They look at power prices. Power prices have done nothing for the most part but go up in the West and in the U.S. and key markets. People have had a decade of this, and they're saying, all right, when are we going to start to see the pull through? And by the way, we think that energy poverty and human flourishing should take priority over, the superseding priority of the last 10 years of climate and CO2.
So, Kirk, I've got a question for you. Are more people dying because Europe and Africa don't have air conditioning like we do in the United States, versus will die from climate change 100 years from now?
Oh, no doubt, man. Air conditioning is the lifesaver for all of us. Listen, I mean, Africa is I know we're going on the agenda to Africa, but climate change is a get rich quick scheme. It has been. When Al Gore kicked it off with a PowerPoint presentation and became a billionaire overnight for doing some slides, it should have said everything we need to know. that this is a scam. People are pushing it. They line the pockets of their buddies, and that's really what's happening. We don't have adults in the room anymore, so it really isn't an issue. It's not that, as you said, Chuck. Do we want to be good stewards? Yeah, blah blah blah. But unfortunately, the fascist playbook is brilliant, and part of the fascist playbook is you silence everyone else but the common narrative, and the narrative is climate change, and we're all scared. And if you say anything negative, people paint you out. And it's like, well, common sense says this doesn't make sense, but you're not allowed to say it. I think that tide has turned, but we unfortunately has destroyed a lot of economies and probably people's lives because of it, and we're seeing it play out. So who cares what's happening in 100 years if we can't put food on the table today?
Like, I think there are a lot of things we should be paying a lot of attention to. All the plastics. I mean, I think if you look into plastics, yeah, it really is causing a lot more estrogen in men, leading to declining birth rates, etc. There's something real we ought to be looking at there. Trash in the ocean. We definitely need to be worried about preserving the ocean habitat and the like.
You know, the two largest polluters in the planet are?
China and the Philippines.
India, China and India.
There you go.
They do not care. So unless, where's the, I mean, I for one, I don't believe in the UN in general. So let's just say that. But it's just a joke. It's a joke. And China continues to build, coal plants. Let's keep going. But anyway, let's move on.
Energy Secretary has been out there in a couple of forums. He's tweeted pretty aggressively, or posted pretty aggressively this week. And, I think, again, the characterization by government leaders, particularly in the U.S., of something you couldn't say 3 or 4 years ago, that net zero by 2050 is a ludicrous idea because it lowers people's standard of living and causes increased misery of energy poverty. And I thought it was interesting that Alessandro Blasi, and I promise, Chuck, this is the only time I bring up the IEA. He's like assistant executive director. Had a LinkedIn post yesterday where he basically enumerated 10 things as to where the climate debate stood right now. And his last point basically said something to the effect that energy poverty in Africa and the lack of clean cooking availability are the shame and injustice of our times. Well, excuse me, you've had a concerted effort by the global financial community, not the least of which has been the IMF and the World Bank, more indirectly organizations like USAID, who've basically said, we're not going to provide loans and loan guarantees if such loans are being made to invest in fossil fuel development. And when you go across the ocean and look at what has happened in Guyana and use that starting point level of general poverty and standard of living and energy poverty, and all of a sudden you've had this wonderful event of the discovery and the massive discoveries in the Guyana Basin, we're in essence saying, look, we're going to deprive many nations in Africa from having that same chance because the natural resource endowment, country to country varies, but at the same time, success with that would certainly help them take much bigger steps. And so you've either been tacitly or explicitly against that. If you've been in a policy leadership standpoint, I found it a little bit ironic and rich coming from someone who has been, front and center with the IEA Secretariat as they've campaigned and pushed all this nonsense over the last 5 years. And so again, the cost in terms of delay and the duration of that delay in really getting after it and spending money in the right places to help people, why can't we have much more aggressive distributed LPG throughout, areas in Africa that are off the grid to help quickly solve some of this clean cooking problem, for example. But I think pointing that out as if we all collectively share in this guilt or this blame of the quote unquote injustice is nonsense.
I mean, we've talked about it a million times. I mean, that's the Marshall Plan for today is let's finance natural gas infrastructure cheaply to the rest of the world, increase their economies, increase trade, standard of living. It's the humane thing to do. We've got enough natural gas in the United States that we could drill, baby drill, and build export terminals and feed the whole world if we wanted to.
I mean, if you want to change behavior, you change the incentives.
Last point, Bloomberg Green, which is a newsletter that comes out. I don't subscribe to Bloomberg, but I used to get the Energy Daily free, but then they put that behind the paywall. But I glanced at the Green newsletter today, and of course it was about Climate Week, but the focus was on, how different the vibe is from the bankers that are in attendance. Whereas 4 or 5 years ago, everybody was pushing green finance. Now it's almost like, third rail type of discussion, in that it's much more of supply side conversation. It's much more look at what AI is going to mean for not only power in the US, but global power, which inherently involves, behind the scenes, I guess, an enthusiasm for investing again in fossil fuel development projects. And some of these are the same banks that willingly signed up for things like the Net Zero Banking Alliance and GFANZ, which was a kind of a soft sanction on financing oil and gas projects and coal projects, for the multi-year period of those, what I call de facto cartels' existence. And so the tone has changed a lot, and hopefully it continues to change. Hopefully it changes pretty markedly in Brazil in November, or continues down this more pragmatic, more balanced conversation path. I just think people are tired of it.
Well, let's go from one disaster to the next, the IEA to BP. So what happened with their annual energy outlook?
Yeah. Talk about, let's go ahead and make a call here now that almost 3/4 of the year is past. But BP's official energy outlook was out, I think, this morning. And the big shift, or the big change, was they moved their call on peak global oil demand from 2025. Again, we're 3/4 of the way through 2025 to no sooner than 2030. And I thought, wow, that seems to be a little coincidental with what we just heard from the IEA.
You can't make this shit up, man.
No,
and
you can't.
Of all the seven sisters, BP keeps fucking it up. I don't know why. Why is it always BP that does it? Hey, Chuck, you don't have your English girlfriend anymore, so we can trash him. But what is wrong with that?
I have no comment, Senator. I can neither confirm nor deny any said allegation. No, I say this about BP. Any person I have ever met that worked for BP, I've always been incredibly impressed with. The Treadstone management team that we backed back at Kane might have been the best management team on the planet. Smart, thoughtful, ex-BP guys. George Sanfilippo, back in the day, ex-BP guy. Jane Stricker, at running energy transition for the Greater Houston Area Partnership. No more impressive person on the planet. They're all amazing, but when BP comes together, it does the most brain dead shit. I don't get it.
Unbelievable.
Well, like the IEA, BP suffers from, I think, I don't know if unprincipled is the right word, but kind of a politically malleable leadership mindset and message, in that I kind of laughed that BP looks like the IEA's twin brother or sister.
I swear someone over there, since they legalized marijuana, is playing with a magic 8-ball. And just like whatever it pops up, it's like, that's our forecast. That's our strategy today. It really is. It doesn't make any sense. And you're right, Mark. I've tried to figure out the logic here. And
I'm surprised they waited this long because of the activist involvement and the big bloodletting that they've had. Now the stock has rebounded some and has been on a bit of a relative outperformance trend here lately. I think I don't follow it that closely. I just know over time what its relative valuation looks like, and these kind of ham-handed strategic shifts that we've all spent plenty of time talking about over the last several years. There is a big disconnect. Like at BP, there are a lot of very smart, capable people on staff at the IEA that do really good work. My issue with them is the secretariat. My issue with BP is with leadership, either at the board level or at the senior executive level. And to have this kind of just ludicrous backpedal or revision to something that, what scenario of reality are you dealing with to put out these outlooks that have oil demand clearly, and oh, by the way, their 2030 oil demand is now at like 103.4 million barrels a day. We're already there, right?
I will say this in defense of BP. When we were selling Panther, and we ultimately wound up selling Panther to, I forget what it was called, but ultimately it's part of Devon now. One of the bidders was actually Lord Brown with some Russian money. And my CEO, Barry Mullinex, was talking with him, and he was freaking starstruck. Oh, Lord Brown was on the call. And so there was a little bit of a rock star thing going on there. So I'll give them that.
So I think we can look for BP to do its, death by 1,000 cuts in messaging, or incrementalize itself to death as we move forward, absent a major structural shift in supply and demand, driven really by demand response. It's, we don't have the data here, but if you look at over the decades what replacement rates have done and how they've regionally shifted, we use, I think, globally 36 billion barrels a year, and we're through exploration replacing less than half that over the last 5 years or so, and we haven't been at replacement rate for some time now. And part of that is you've had a huge focus shift away from true exploration, but also there's kind of questioning what the terminal value of these enterprises are by some in the investment community.
Yeah.
We've talked about what's happened. We've talked about what's happened to exploration spending over the last 10, 15 years. But
I wrote about it back in like 2011 and 2012, and how budgets just continue to go backwards.
So back when we were raising Energy Fund 8, call it 2018, all the buzz was EVs and oil's going to be gone. We're not going to use it in 10 years. And I was asked to go to the CIO conference and give a speech. And I got up there and I said, okay, let me read some headlines from the New York Times. Electric vehicles are sexy. Electric vehicles have vastly superior performance. Electric vehicles are greatest thing since sliced bread. And I said, let's talk about this. Do you know how many cars there are in the United States? There are 400 million. Do you know how long the average car is on the road? 12 and a half years. Do you know how many of those cars are still going to be on the road? 93% of them, because they get shipped to South America when we stop using them. And I went through all this stuff, and I said, even if we hit 30 million, EVs a year in sales, and I went through all the stats, still 85% of the cars are going to be, oil-based in 15 years. So I went through all of this and basically said, hey, oil's not going anywhere. In fact, usage is going to continue to go up. And I said, thank you very much. And I got this smattering of applause. And I took a few steps away from the mic. Then I came back and I said, oh, by the way, those headlines from the New York Times, 1917, 1918, and 1919. This shit isn't new. And
that's
so
touche, man.
And that's kind of what I feel like too. I mean, if you wanted to tell me oil was going to peak in 2040, I can't really argue that. If you're going to say it's going to peak in 2035, okay, maybe. I don't know. But I would take the over if I had to bet my life savings on it.
What about BP's second scenario about they need to get below 2 degrees Celsius fantasy that demands a 90% emissions cut by 2050? It's like planning a surf trip to Norman, Oklahoma. I mean, it's just impossible.
I'm going to buy some shorts.
Chuck, you're recounting that last anecdote is uncanny because I was looking through on YouTube a whole, series of past shows, and I just happened to land on. I was actually looking to see which ones we got fact checked on and looking for the footnotes, but I actually watched almost the entirety of one from 2 years ago. It was June of 2023, and we spent a lot of time focused on things like Norway and its electrification. Yet. And Colin was on that show, so that tells you how long ago it was. Kirk, you were in Nantucket, but you were talking about, how much does the average Norwegian consume in oil on a per capita basis per year? And it was 19 barrels per year compared to the U.S. at 21, despite the fact that you've got huge EV penetration in Norway.
And hydro out the wazoo, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of head scratching going on amongst us around, well, how do we account for Norwegian oil demand staying so resilient? But you also made the point, Chuck, that the life cycle of an ICE vehicle and other things and other segments in the Norwegian economy is explanatory when it comes to that intensity. And I made the comment, there's a lot of water in Norway. They got a lot of boats. Everybody's got a boat.
And we make really good cars today. I mean, say what you want about Detroit. Cars are really good these days. I mean, they'll run forever. Yeah. I mean, how often do you get a new car because it breaks down? Never. You get a new car because you want a new car, not because it broke down. So, all right. Are we on to the next topic? Na, 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 na. Hey, hey, hey. Goodbye.
Yeah, this is the left coast, I guess, equivalent of East Coast and New England offshore wind killing whales. We've got, and I really hadn't paid attention to this facility, but you've got an announcement that in 2026, you're going to have a closure about 13 or 14 years before the end of the power purchase agreement of something called the Ivanpah concentrated solar facility, which is in the south central Mojave Desert on the border of California and Nevada. It's in California. And this thing is something that carpets about 5 square miles. Have you guys heard of this facility?
Yeah, a really good friend of mine was CEO of this, and actually was instrumental in setting it up. And as you're telling this story, I remember him telling me about it for the first time, and I thought it was batshit crazy. But he's a smart guy. I will say John's a really smart guy.
Yeah, and there were demonstrations at kind of 20 megawatt scale. And what it is concentrated solar. It's a bunch of mirrors that are controlled by some type of intelligence that orient the mirrors in this solar facility to maximize the reflective concentration of the solar rays that then go up to these 450 foot tall receivers at about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which then, you're able to generate steam, which then, through conventional steam turbine technology, generate electricity. The big problem is, or one of the big problems, one of the trade-offs is that you're frying about 6,000 birds a year. So over the course of this facility's operation, you've cooked about 60,000 birds or more. There was also some commentary in there about, the Mojave desert tortoise it's problematic because you've taken out a big chunk of its habitat. But this was one of the projects that came out of, I don't know if it was before or after Solyndra, the DOE loan guarantee back in the Obama administration in 2012 of $1.6 billion, which, kind of total sunk cost now into the facility is like $2.2 billion. But economics are really the driver. PG&E moved to terminate the power purchase agreement that was supposed to run in 2039 early. So they're gonna shut down in 2026.
Yeah. So we at Shell, unfortunately, I got thrown into that one, but we're an investor in Glass Point Solar. Similar idea. There's a project in Oman where basically, they concentrated solar to create steam for EOR, but it's crazy idea. Actually, I think it's difficult, but here's my thought. What if we could figure out how to bred these birds and we could have fried chicken? It would be fantastic, dude.
Big vat of barbecue sauce on the ground, so when they get sapped,
yeah,
they're in the hot sauce.
You just reminded me of one of my favorite Cajun jokes,
which is,
well, Boudreaux and Couvillon were talking about, they'd been out hunting the day before. Couvillon had been out hunting the day before, and he shot him a chicken hawk, and Boudreaux say, "What'd you do with that chicken hawk?" He said, "I ate it. Made a gumbo." He said, "You ate that chicken hawk?" And Couvillon said, "Yeah." And Boudreaux say, "What's that chicken hawk taste like?" He says, "About like owl."
Like owl.
About like owl.
So
I will
PG&E
say,
is term. Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I was going to say, technically, I think the project was actually pretty thoughtful. Let's use mirrors to concentrate heat and boil water and all that. It just supposedly had problems with storms because the mirrors would get dirty, and there was a lot more maintenance there than was anticipated.
Yes.
You didn't have energy storage out there. And so you only operated when the sun was out, and water would cool down pretty rapidly. So you'd start over from room temperature, if you will, each morning. I don't know that that's exactly true. But it did generate electricity. My only beef with the project is the government guaranteed all the loans. If this had been a private enterprise, hey, God bless you. You tried it. It didn't work, or it only worked about 2/3 of what it was supposed to. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the point. The technology proof and then commercial scale up, there is a market for that, proving proven potential and viability. I've said it before and I'll say it again. When I flip the switch, I don't care where the power comes from. I just care that there's power there and the lights and AC are on.
So I worked with some great Dutch people, and Glass Point Solar had their hand out for more money. And I'm in an investment committee with one of the most pessimistic investors I've ever been around. But he was in on Glass Point for political reasons. And we almost got to a knockdown drag out. I'm like, they want more money. We're not giving it to them. Like, we just keep funding this idiotic idea that concentrated solar is great, but the economics aren't proving out. And I've never seen a guy so upset over, come on, we need to give them more money to see if they can succeed. And I'm like, that is a good strategy when it's early. But after a few $100 million, or in this case, 1.6 billion, at some point you got to just call it. Just like PG&E finally terminated their PPA 14 years early. And I'm wondering if they're like, man, wow, from a 5-iron away, she looked like a birdie, but up close, she's more like a triple bogey. I mean,
how bad does it have to be for PG&E to cancel a contract? I mean, like, I would think of any of the people out there, that would be the most forgiving mistress on the planet.
One of the factors that was cited is that, solar photovoltaic is, got better economics than this concentrated solar, which is interesting. So I don't know if they're going to swap that power supply from concentrated solar into an equivalent with respect to solar PV, but I thought that was another interesting aspect of it. Hey, let's try it. I love we talked about it, it's been some time ago. I don't know if you guys remember talking about the thermal batteries with the carbon bricks. I think, I like that kind of that tech.
There's some cool ideas that actually might make sense. But it reminds me of another project we're an investor in. It was a Google idea where, here's the logic. It makes a lot of sense, right? Hey, the wind really high in the sky blows harder and more consistently than the wind lower. So why don't we fly a kite up there and generate energy? This, seriously, Google came up with this. And Shell funded it.
I need to find your tweet thread.
Then I came in on this and I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm just like, I'm not an engineer, but I think about operations all the time. And I'm like, okay, so we have a gigantic kite up in the sky. And it's not on a pole because it's on a line. And I'm like, you tell me how that's going to work when the wind stops blowing or there's a storm or, birds, airplanes. I'm like, this makes no sense whatsoever. And it never did make sense. But all these engineers, and in fact, when Shell was like, oh, it's Google, they're cool. Like, we're investors with Google. I'm like, you guys are drinking the Kool-Aid and have not thought about the fact that we're basically investing in a gigantic kite. And kites do only one thing. They fall to the ground after you play chicken with them, or the string breaks, or, we've all flown kites. We know what happens. They don't last forever.
Do you ever put razor blades on your kites?
My brother and I used to fly kites at each other. He'd get the bat kite from TG&Y, and I'd get the white one with the big eyes. And we had wars. We always would get it up, let all the string out, and that's when we start dogfighting. I mean, the kites lasted for 5 minutes. It was awesome.
But did you ever affix razor blades to your bat kites?
I mean, that's a lot of work, only because we were lazy and we wanted to get a thing up in the air and start fighting. That's all. I mean, that's the only reason we didn't do that.
So back to this tech, there was an X thread. It's been a couple of 3 weeks ago that you were back and forth on with this technology, and there was a Chinese example Maybe we can dig that up.
Yeah, I'll go look for it.
Post that. My question is, and these were super high altitudes as I recall. What is the transmission, or how does that work at super high altitude?
That's the other question I couldn't figure out, is how do we get this power back down and do something with it? Which is the same thing with Mojave Desert as well. It's like,
well, you're not flying a bunch of batteries up there. They're too heavy.
No, but let's generate power in the middle of nowhere. I mean, that sounds like a good idea.
Last Friday night, I went and saw John Cleese. And John Cleese did a showing of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And I don't know if y'all remember the scene where they were trying to get inside the castle and they built this big rabbit, and the rabbit goes in and they forget to be inside the rabbit. And it's like, oh my God, what do we do? Perhaps we should build a big badger. That's kind of what this technology feels like. Let's go build a big badger. It was great,
man. It's great.
All righty, boys. Well, I've officially had enough to drink where I have to go to the bathroom. So,
wow. Well,
drink? You sure you're not at a bar?
I am not at a bar. Triple filtered water, the best thing. The best thing on a. I've been drunk for about 2 weeks now. I went to Telluride to the Blues and Brews Festival. I wound up going to Denver to Churchill's Bar. Then I did Jimmy Carr. Then I did John Cleese. Then I did Jeff Ross's one-man show, like said earlier. Then I did Leon Bridges and Charlie Crockett. And then last night we had a happy hour in Austin. And so my body has said there will only be water for 2 weeks. I'm done.
But before we leave, guys, the 2025 Ryder Cup is upon us at Bethpage Black. There's already a lot of drama. So are y'all tuning in? It kicks off tomorrow morning.
Absolutely.
All right. So just to make bring it all together, John Woolard, who was CEO of Bright Source, which built that solar plant, he and I went to the Ryder Cup, and that was the year Justin Leonard hit that 50-foot putt to win it. It was at whatever, right outside of Boston. I'm blanking on the name of the course.
Brookline.
Yeah, whatever the course was. But he and I went to the Ryder Cup together.
Amazing. Well, that's
surprised you're not
in my backyard.
There. Kirk, are you going to be there?
I am not going to be there. I thought about it, but I just not going to go this year. I'll probably regret it. It is probably the most fun event in the world to go to, a golf event. It's just so fun. But we'll see.
Waste management's more fun.
I might catch a kite over to the festivities, and I'll podcast it also and show you guys.
I want to see you debate Brandel Chambly, who,
dude, he went off on Bryson DeChambeau, calling him a captain's nightmare, and that all of his YouTube followers are bots from Saudi Arabia. So he's Brandel Chambly is insane, but there was a great article written about him today that dropped this morning. He might be the best golf writer that's or what do you call him? Writer, media guy. He is actually fantastic. He's super controversial, but guess what? What sells newspapers? Controversy, and he brings it.
Are you talking about Brandel or are you talking about Bryson?
Brandel.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Hey,
I just think I think the whole Saudi angle is hypocritical.
Oh,
if he's never benefited from the miracle that was Saudi oil that started in the 50s, then he can take the high road.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, hot take from Mark to end it. All right, boys. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
Great seeing you.